This first case articles on the go feature is titled My First Heart Surgery, written by Lindsey Joyce, MSN, RN, CNL, CNOR. March 4th, 2021. A day I knew was coming since I started learning how to scrub cardiac surgery back in October of 2020. I never thought I would be ready to do a coronary artery bypass grafting, CABG, on my own. I mean, I had never circulated a CABG before September 2020, let alone scrubbed one. I had taken pictures, made notes, and would study every night when I knew I was scrubbing the next day. As a 37-year-old, I figured my studying days were over. But with my notes and texting my preceptor all the time, I was bound and determined to do one on my own. I started out learning small steps. First, I learned how to set up for vein and radial artery harvesting. 2 small tables of instruments and equipment for the assistants to do their magic. Once I had mastered setting those up, it was on to setting up the main 2 Mayo stands used for surgery. Up to this point in my career, I was used to setting up 1 Mayo stand and 1 back table, maybe 2 for certain cases, but never 2 Mayo stands. I'd go over the pictures in my head of how they had looked and tried to replicate them. Once I was able to show I knew how to set them up and that I knew the next order of events, I went on to help the surgeon take down the mammary artery. Once I mastered those first few steps, I'd do them on my own and then my preceptor would take over, but I'd stay scrubbed in to keep learning. Repetition is the key to mastering any surgical specialty. The major portions of a CABG that require precise knowledge of steps is cannulation, going on the heart-lung machine, and doing the anastomosis. You better know those steps backwards, forwards, and in your sleep, or else things can go bad very quickly. Learning these was by far the hardest part of learning to scrub hearts. It took a few months to get it down, but I eventually got it. Finally, the day came where it was time to put it all together. My preceptor stayed scrubbed in and was mostly hands-off while I tried not to look at my notes that I had taped up in my line of vision. But I did have to peek over at them and verify with her that the proximal suture was a 5/0 Prolene backhand with a bulldog. Right? I didn't know I was doing my first CABG solo until I showed up to work that day. The surgeon on call that day had 2 CABGs, and I was doing his second case scheduled to start at noon that day. You can start opening at 10 a.m. That will give you plenty of time to set up, my preceptor said. We opened at 10, and then she said, "Okay, be set up by 11. Instruments counted and all." And she left me to it. What? I couldn't get all this done by 11? Are you kidding? It was near 11:30 by the time I felt okay with my setup and the patient was rolled in. Prepping for a CABG can take about 30 minutes, so a quick lunch and I was back ready for incision. "Leg incision," the first assistant yelled. A few minutes later, after the patient had been draped, "Arm incision," is shouted for the circulator to hear. Time to toss those lines off. I know, gotta make sure it's perfect. It wasn't, to let you know. Oh, there's the doctor. Time to make the chest incision. Don't forget to make the vancomycin paste. No, he wants the DeBakey pickups, not the Scanlons. I'm getting frustrated with myself. Come on, Lindsey, you can do this. Now it's time to cannulate. One of the most delicate parts of any CABG. This is the part of the procedure that I know, and I nail it. Graft time. I had the prepping instruments ready to pass as they're called for. "Stitch," the surgeon says. I have the 7/0 ready to go, but oh no! I handed to him wrong. He looks at me, takes it the wrong way and fixes it, and I want to cry and feel tears forming, knowing I messed up. I know that needle holder goes in his right hand. Why did I hand it to him in his left? I feel defeated. It's okay, my preceptor, who's not scrubbed in, says to me. There's 4 more grafts to get it right. I pull myself together and know I've got 6 to 7 minutes to get the end of case items in order. "Retrograde," I hear. Back to paying attention to the field. I take the tiny needle and place it in its spot, grab the remnants, and get ready for the next graft. "Stitch," is commanded, and this time I hand it to the surgeon the correct way. I do it the correct way 3 more times, and I'm finally starting to feel better about myself. "Hot shot." That's my cue that we're ready to make our descent into finishing this case. Pacer wires, 4OSH, de-airing needle. I hand the items as they're called for. We come off pump, no bleeding time to get the wires and plates ready to go. Everything is prepped for the surgeon. He closes the chest and breaks scrub. I hand the closing suture to the assistant and the surgeon breaks scrub. He gets his items and, on the way out, yells, "Good job, Lindsey!" You can see the big smile that comes across my face even under the mask, and the room breaks into applause. It's 2:30 p.m., but feels so much later. I had made it through my first CABG as a cardiac scrub nurse. That was my first case to scrub as a cardiac scrub nurse, but it wasn't the last. It was only the beginning of what has become a great career for me. As always, thanks for listening to this episode of First Case Articles on the Go.